Good afternoon, Richard.
Hi,
Thanks
Tim.
for joining me in this conversation. You'll
Very
know
welcome.
that in a moment at the church meeting, I said that, or suggested that I would talk to you about our proposals for an outreach worker, so that between us we can share with the church a little bit about how we've got to this position and why we are now bringing this recommendation to the church to help the church to grasp the vision that we've got as leaders in the church. So thank you very much for spending this time talking to me, and let's hope that something out of this will really resonate with the church members who watch it. First of all, you've been with us now 12 months, almost exactly, since you were inducted as minister. Just share with us a little bit about your experience, your observations, your thoughts really about where we are as a church.
Okay, it is literally 12 months and 3 to 4 days now, isn't it, since my induction into the church. But I've only really been here for 5 months before the lockdown. And it was very strange because I felt like I was making good progress and traction, getting to know people and seeing people in their homes and talking about people, who are working and what they're doing. And that I felt that was going really well at a good rate, a good sustainable rate. And then suddenly the rug's pulled, isn't it? And it's the same with everybody. I think I'm grateful that I've been at the church long enough to have done that and got a kind of sense of the place and its history and its background. But there's still a lot of work to do. There's still a lot of work of discerning to do. And one of the things that I feel absolutely determined to do is the fact that God has not finished with Taunton Baptist Church. Otherwise, for myself, I wouldn't have sensed that strong sense of calling when we began our discussion in the spring of last year. And the church have affirmed that. There is something here that I think there's enough to build on to really consider what God is calling us to in the future. And that's exciting to me. But we're in a typical place with a lot of churches. We've got a lot of people over 60. We've got a missing generation of between 20 and 40. And that's a concern. And I think part of my inner evangelist, part of my inner missionary, part of my inner preacher wants to do something about that, wants to add to the ministry in that sense here at Taunton. And of course, as you know, one person is one person, and it can either lead to burnout or it can be a fruitful ministry. And I passionately believe in fruitful ministry, and I'm against the Satan's tricks on us for burnout and thinking we can do everything ourselves, that we are not the Messiah. Jesus is the Messiah, and he's the one that we trust. He's our good shepherd. And I just don't think God's finished with Taunton yet, Tim.
Good. Well, that's very pleasing to hear, and I think that's shared with all the members of the church through all that we've been through. That sense that God is continuing to lead us, that we're pilgrim people, and we need to keep moving forward. We started well before lockdown to think about recruiting somebody else into the paid team, and we were already having some thinking in the leadership team about that prior to lockdown. And I think we all felt that it was important that we continued that conversation, discussion, and didn't let this interruption stop us seeking to move forward. And so we thought about where we could recruit somebody to make maximum impact within the church, and on the basis that you are in your fifth.
Well, Tim, I don't know if you can hear me, but there's divine judgment here, because I think you were about to say I was in my 50s. Okay, Tim, you've frozen here.
50-ish coming up now. Yeah, that's better. Sorry, we froze for a moment.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
But there is this younger age group, and in the past, the church has had youth work, has had associate ministry with a particular focus on youth. And that does seem to be an area where we need to focus again. And various pointers led to us working along those lines. We talked about whether this should be an associate minister, but we didn't really want to limit ourselves because we recognised that somebody coming to work with us might not have a ministry background. How do you see that particular issue?
I've got a high view of training and ministerial formation and calling, and I'm definitely of the view that if we're going to call someone for mission and ministry, or a youth working, pioneering, evangelist role, that this person has got to have been trained and formed and had formation in some formal sense, because otherwise, we can all just make it up and have our own ideas. But there's something about, knowing the signs of the times doesn't just come by intuition. It comes by a lot of hard work and a lot of input. And we don't just speak into a vacuum either. I think if we've got someone who understands culture and the fact that we live in a post-Christian society that's highly secularized and almost passively aggressive anti-church or anti-Christianity, we've got someone who can tailor evangelism to the missing generation in that regard. So yeah, I've got a high view of training, and I have been trained. I've studied theology myself for 20 years, and it's the greatest privilege to do that, Tim. But nobody would come to me and say, could you do a triple heart bypass surgery? And I'll say, hold on a minute, I'll just look at a YouTube video and then I'll be with you and I'll do it. No, they want competence and a proven track record, and they want calling. And I think we need to be looking at exactly those things as well. I think not rarely, sometimes it can work for some kinds of people who haven't had that kind of structured training and input. But I mean, let's be honest, most of the time, you have to go for that. So that's my view. All cards on the table there.
Yeah. Tell me then what your sense is of what this person would do working with you, because it's really vital to have somebody who can work well with you and with Lauren and the team.
Yeah.
A team player, but also what would their sort of daily job involve, do you think?
I mean, we've talked about all kinds of different ministries, haven't we? We've gone from a minister in training to a youth worker to a pioneer to an evangelist to someone associated with other agencies and ministries that are going on in Taunton right now. I would want there to be overlap with me in pastoral ministry, and that's another way to avoid abdicating responsibilities. Like everybody else, I'm called to bear witness and to give an answer for the hope that is within us, and to do that in gentleness and love. But I'm also a pastor of an aging church. Now, it would be a mistake to think that my only ministry and priority is to care and tend to the needs of the aging population of the members of the church. As much as I love them, this church won't be here if that's all I did in 10 years. The building will be here, but it'll be a block of flats or a carpet factory or something like that. So there's got to be crossover in ministry. So I would want to work alongside someone who's called to be a missioner sent out from us, in as much as I'm trying to be a missioner as well as a pastor in the church. It has to be both. I think Lauren's work as a youth and families worker can be supported and bolstered and strengthened by that too. So we've got overlap now on two different ministries within the life of the church, and the idea of working alongside someone in that capacity to me is exciting, because it means that I can have input myself into that person. It's an opportunity to do discipleship and mentoring. I think for the church as well, though, Tim, that where we have to take responsibility as Christians in a declining church culture is there are moments in our lives where we will know over the decades that we've missed opportunities, we have coasted, we have taken things for granted. And I think we are at a really critical stage in our culture where we really cannot just go on as normal. It doesn't make any sense to think that will work. Because as you said, you were about to say that I'm in my 50s, but you redeemed yourself by saying I'm approaching my 50s next year. And I've said to you, Tim, I've said it to Eric and others as well. I'm a former missionary, evangelist. I've not come to Taunton to waste my 50s in the sense of not looking at the whole aspect of mission and evangelism, pastoral care, pastoral ministry, church leadership, and development and mentoring of people. You know, they're the things that I'm really passionate about, as well as teaching and preaching and theology, of course. But they're all intermingled. They're all together of the same thing. Take one thing out, and you've got something for me that's a bit wonky. So I'm a big picture person. I want to see all of it functioning really well. I want to see Lauren supported in her work. I want the church as a building, not the people now. I want the church, with all the people that we've got coming through, to be leaking out the love of God, to be oozing gospel, and to be letting people know that we know what we're about. We know our business. We know that we're here to share the good news of Jesus Christ in our community, and that's what we're going to do. And I think you've frozen on. Oh, there you are. You've come back again. Did you get all that?
Yes. I think we'll be fine. I think we were getting there.
Yeah.
The next question I was going to ask was how do you think this person is going to add to the work and outreach of the church?
Again, a lot of that comes down to the type of ministry and the calling that we're seeking to discern what God is calling us to. There's always a job for missioners into schools and youth groups and so on, and all sorts of other specialities like drop-in centres, homework clubs, and those kind of things. There's also, tons of stuff that can be added to through Lauren's ministry and the support that can come through that. But again, this is one of the things that I think we've been wrestling with for quite a few months, because we have looked at every single possibility of ministry, haven't we? Like I say, minister in training, youth worker, evangelist, missioner, enabler, pioneer. And to me, that's a really good sign that we're really genuinely keeping our options open. And I think in that process, God will speak, so whatever it will be, it will have to have an impulse outward. Because at the moment, I've got an impulse inward and outward, and it can, I think, for the long term, as we know with most churches and most ministers, it's absolutely overwhelming in the end. And I think we're on the right track for making some good decisions here.
Tell me about how you think we should best process this and to move forward then. Well,
doing conversations like this that people can, people in the church can watch and engage with. And it's not about, for us, it's not about whether you agree or not, because we all know how social groups work. You have your early adopters and your late adopters. You have some people that will kind of sit back and wait and see and prayerfully consider and then say, yeah, I can go with this. Some people will never, ever agree with what decisions are being made and so on. They're the never adopters. And every large group like a church has those people into. Okay, fine. We have to live with that. And then there are those that kind of trust the process. The minister that's been appointed, the diaconate that have also been appointed prayerfully. We're not speaking here in a vacuum, are we? So I think the process is really important. Moments like this are important. And helping people in the church, like you say, it comes through our tithes, doesn't it? We tithe, we give, and suddenly we talk about ministry. There's no point in rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, which is what we would be doing if it was just about looking after ourselves. Any church that is thinking about an impulse outward is a church that might be down on its knees, but it's not down yet. It's not out for the count. I think just having that conversation, Tim, and trying to take as many people and convince as many people that this is not a bad move. What's the worst that could happen? I mean, seriously, if we call a youth worker or an evangelist, I mean, what is the worst that could happen? So there are worse decisions that we could make. That's what I mean.
Yes.
And everything is a risk. And everything is a faith venture. We have to stay out of the boat with all of those other ventures that we talk about. Faith. We're not just paying lip service to this. We're wanting to rock and roll and go with it and see what God will do. and he's
and
with us.
ultimately, God is sovereign ultimately,
Yes.
and he will, if we trust him with our plans, he will guard and guide our plans, won't he? And he will take us each step.
Yes.
And that's what we have to do. We have to keep moving forward step by step, in line with God, in the faith that he has someone that he wants to send to us, that we can care for, who can care for and work with us, and that together we will build God's kingdom. You were saying on Sunday about the labourers being few, and praying that God would send labourers into the harvest field. And that's, I think, what we're doing in seeking to reach out, find another labourer or two to join us to reap the harvest.
Tim, I'm glad you mentioned that, Tim, because I wasn't thinking of this conversation or our leadership team conversation when I brought that message. It would have been brought anyway, because it's kind of always true, isn't it? So I want to just reassure people that there really is. I literally I've got no hidden agenda on this. I want us to seek God together and to pursue what he has for us. Yeah, so that's right. I'm glad you remembered something from that. That's good.
Well, that's great. Unless you want to add anything else, I think we've probably taught for as long as people will particularly want to listen. So it would be good just to sort of thank and just simply ask God now to guide us and help us.
And also, I'd just add, Tim, before we just close in prayer and pray for the church as well, and all the other ministers in Taunton, that we can have all sorts of ideas, and a lot of them can be good, a lot of them can be ropey, and a lot of them can be, backwards or bad or whatever. But we do need to be praying about this as well, and trust God. And it's like walking past a homeless person and asking God, is it right if I give this person some food? Or well, yes. What's the worst that can happen? They've got too much food. It's not going to be a bad thing. So I think there's something there about engaging in actual Christian ministry and not just being obsessed or only wanting the wheels of the church to stay on. We've got a mission that God has given us, and it is to share the good news. And that's one of the reasons why I am excited about being at Taunton, despite the lockdown, which will never, ever thwart the gospel. The fact that we're having this conversation is the most important thing. It's really good. Yeah,
thank you. Father, we thank you for this conversation. We thank you for the way you're leading and guiding us. And we commit the future of this person, this appointment, this church into your sovereign hands. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Bless you.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay, see you soon.
Take care.